Hello and welcome to this video where I'm going to be talking about my overall thoughts on the spring 2016 anime season. So first up, I got a new camera. Now you guys already should have noticed a fairly large increase in the video quality. Now that may fluctuate a bit over the next few days as I try and find the kind of optimal settings for my current setup, but I had to play with it yesterday and I think I've got it pretty good at the moment. So now on to the topic of the actual video. I was able to check out 7 shows this season and I'm going to be going through all of them, giving you a few thoughts that I had and telling you whether or not I continued watching them to the end or whether I dropped them. And as I always say at the beginning of these videos, I am extremely flippant when it comes to watching anime. So if I dropped a show that you really love, chances are the problem is with me and not with the actual show. Okay, so first up we've got Gundam Re 0096. Now, I made a bit of a mistake in my first impressions video of this season. I said that this was the next entry in the Gundam series and I wasn't really right with that. This is actually Gundam Unicorn, an OVA Gundam series that has been split up into TV-sized episodes. And you can really tell because, my god, the visuals look awesome. Like, Gundam is always of a very high quality when it comes to the technical aspects, but here it just blows everything else out of the water. This is probably the best Gundam series I've ever seen. The problems with this series for me come in with the fact that this is a part of the UC timeline, and that means that you're going to need a fair amount of background knowledge in order to fully understand everything that's happening. This is background knowledge that I did not have. I ended up getting very lost and at certain points I was actually really frustrated and I just said, you know, I'm never going to understand any of this stuff. The anime is never going to explain it to me, so why should I bother continuing? Now, if you're a Gundam fan, you've probably already watched this and absolutely loved it, and I think even if you're not a Gundam fan, you can go into this as long as you know that there's going to be parts that you don't understand. You can still go into this and enjoy it quite a bit, but I guess I just didn't have the patience for it, so I dropped it at episode 3. Next up, we have 12 Sigh, and the first thing I noticed when I started watching this is that the animation is utter dog shit. I mean, everybody moves like they're a fucking robot, just so incredibly stiff and stilted, and the writing on top of that was kind of crappy as well. So at the 3-minute mark, I was ready to just chuck this show in, but I knew that wouldn't be fair. I mean, you can't judge a show on just 3 minutes, so I manned up, continued watching, and to my surprise, there's actually quite a few positive qualities to this. There were quite a few sweet moments, and I really loved how they covered female adolescence in here. Now, it's not usually a topic that comes up too often in anime, at least. It's never usually covered to this degree, so that's a point in its favour, and oh, it was so funny the way that they covered the differences in adolescent relationships. Like, you got the relationships that the two people just come together beautifully. It's love at first sight and they just get along so well. And then you got the other couple that's just so incredibly awkward. Everything that they try and do just goes completely wrong, but they love each other and that's what really matters. Unfortunately, the problems that I already had were still there. The animation still sucked. The writing was still cliche, and it also seemed really rushed as well. Like, there was this one bullying subplot that was brought up, played out, and resolved in the matter of like 5 minutes. Even with the good qualities, it wasn't good enough to keep me watching, so I dropped this at episode 3 as well. And then there was Bungo Stray Dogs. I don't know if my expectations were way too high, but this series fucking fell off real quick. At the time that I made my first impressions video, I said that this was one of the most enjoyable experiences I've ever had watching an anime, and at the time, at the end of episode 3, that still rang true, and episode 4 was still really good, and then at episode 5 it started to decline quite heavily for me. I wasn't laughing as much, and in episode 6 I wasn't laughing at all, and the serious stuff that they were trying to throw at me in that episode wasn't really hitting either, so I had to come to the sad realization that this just wasn't the show for me anymore, so I dropped it at episode 6. Moving right along, we've got Macross Delta, a series that I was highly anticipating because I'm a big fan of the Macross franchise. Unfortunately, it was a bit hard for me to get into this one because I had a few problems with the premise. Now, the Macross series has always talked about how music can break social boundaries and really bring the world together. But here it seemed a lot less believable than it usually is. Because the idols in here, they weren't just singing. No, they were in the middle of battle, they were doing all these amazing acrobatics, they were putting up shields, and they were curing diseases. The world is overrun with this illness called VAR syndrome, which causes people to turn into absolute maniacs and start killing everyone. And the main cure for this is a healthy dose of J-pop. Now, they do a bit to explain this later on, but I'm sorry, that still seems really stupid to me. But look, I got past it. It only took like 1 or 2 episodes, but I got past it, and holy crap, I love this show. I absolutely adore it. The characters are all extremely likable, the visuals are pretty good as well, and the music. Now, you'd expect a show like this, which has a big focus on music, to have at the very least a great soundtrack, but this has to be one of my favourite soundtracks in anime. Like, every single episode has a new song and they're all fantastic. I would almost say that this show's worth checking out, almost solely based on the amazing soundtrack alone. If you're a fan of mecha anime, please go right now, leave this video if you have to, start watching it. Next on the agenda is, haven't you heard, I'm Sakamoto. Now, I have never been a fan of comedies, especially really dumb comedies, and the way the synopsis made this anime sound, it seemed like a really dumb comedy. So I went into this expecting to hate it, arms folded, thinking, oh, this is going to be shit. This is going to be so incredibly, unbelievably horrible. Boy, am I so glad that I was completely wrong on this. At first, it seemed like a fairly standard comedy, you know, nothing too much out of the ordinary, but then in episode 2, there were a few scenes that showed that there's an emotional center here, there's passion, there's touching scenes, and that is something that I wasn't expecting. Another thing that I wasn't expecting was that this anime has continuity. With most of the dumb comedies, you get a bunch of jokes, the next episode is a bunch of jokes, next episode a bunch more jokes, and it all seems kind of disconnected, but here there are actual significant story events and things that happened in previous episodes will affect how characters react in future episodes. I'm sure a few of you are looking at this and thinking this is just such a minor nothing, but I was so stoked that there was actual character progression in here. Another reason why I absolutely fell in love with this, and I think this also ties into the reason why I didn't like Bungo Stray Dogs as much as I thought I would. This anime isn't trying to be gut-bustingly hilarious all the time now. It certainly has those moments, but for the most part it's just really pleasant, and I constantly had a smile on my face, and because of this, it helped me relax. Now, with other comedies like Bungo, it's just like joke, 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 jokes constantly in my face, and you know, it was really hard for me to relax with those shows, and that's why I think I get burnt out with shows that are just constantly shoving their comedy in my face. But with this, It's a lot more laid back, and at the end of a really hard day, and in this season there were a lot of really hard days for me, there was nothing better than getting home and putting on an episode of Haven't You Heard I'm Sakamoto. So again, highly recommend this. Then we have one of the more popular shows this season, ReZero. Now I like this. Don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed this and I'm still watching it today. But I really had to ignore a lot of problems in order to do so. There were a lot of things that, I didn't quite like about the way the story was going, and I had a bunch of questions going off in my head, and I just had to say, look, push those to the side. You're not going to get anywhere by questioning every single little thing you don't like. So I was able to ignore a lot of the problems I had with the story, but one thing that I wasn't able to ignore was how I felt about the characters. And outside of the two leads, Subaru and Amelia, I did not give a crap about anybody in here. Like, the guy who owns the mansion and dresses in clown makeup, didn't give a crap. The really muscular bartender, didn't give a crap. The lolly, the blonde-haired lolly that's a total bitch, didn't give a crap. And especially the maids. With the amount of focus they get, like with a whole story arc dedicated to building them up and giving them development, in the end I was just kind of like, they're okay, I guess, and I don't think I cared about them as much as I should, so all of that really brought the show down for me. So with all these problems I'm talking about, why am I still watching this? Well, as I mentioned before, Subaru and Amelia, I've really grown attached to them, I genuinely care about them, and I want to see what happens with them in the future. Also, I found the time travel plot really interesting. Like, I'm looking forward to seeing how they explain it, because they haven't explained all that much about it at this point, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how this is all resolved. I've actually had a few comments from people on my first impressions video, people who read the visual novels, about a few things that are going to happen, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how they play out. And finally, we have my favourite anime of the season, Joka Game. Now, is this going to be a landmark title that people remember for years to come? Probably not, but the one word that comes to my mind when I think about how to describe this show is solid. Everything in here, every single element is just really, really solid. The episodic storytelling in here was so well done, and this is coming from a guy who usually prefers long-running stories, like just having one main plot throughout the entire anime, but I couldn't help but love the self-contained episodic stories in here, and all of them were of a really high quality. Like, usually with episodic shows you get a few dips here and there with a few story arcs that didn't quite pan out, but I can't think of a single bad episode in here. The episodic storytelling also allows them to go to all these different settings. Like, there's a few episodes that are based in Japan, obviously, because it's a Japanese spy agency, but they also go to France, they go to England, they go to Shanghai, and you get to see all these different cultures and all these different people in the countries from the eyes of a spy. It was very interesting. This show was just fascinating to me from beginning to end, and it's unfortunate. I feel like many people have just skipped over this because there's been so much competition this season. So if you're one of those people that haven't watched this yet, please give it a try. You won't regret it. So to end things off, I'll ask a question that many people have asked over the course of the season, especially at the beginning. Is this the best season of anime ever? Honestly, it's really hard to say, but I will say this. For sure, it's ramping up to be the best season this year. I don't see any of the future seasons topping this, or at the very least it's going to be really, really hard. And it's definitely the best season since I started making YouTube videos. Like, this kicks the shit out of the winter season, and it's even better than fall of 2015, so that's something you can take away from this. So anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you have any feedback, feel free to leave a comment, and if you like this video and want to see more, feel free to subscribe as well. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.